Hey everybody, my name is Paul Esden Jr., aka Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. We're streaming live simultaneously in 3 different places. The Heavy on Jets Facebook page, over 30,000 of you crazy gosh darn New York Jet fans. On my YouTube channel, youtube.com/BoyGreen25. And of course, on the Twitter sphere, at BoyGreen25, baby. Hashtag branding. But let's get right to the point. Derek Carr, that beast, is going to get released, and he is getting released today, as a matter of fact. And to get all the details about that, and of course, looking ahead to a potential New York Jets connection, there was only one man we could bring into this program, and he's a national gosh darn columnist for Bleacher Report and also a Raiders guru of sorts. Let's bring him in. Moe Moton joining us for the very first time here on the program. Mo, what's poppin', baby?
What's going on, Paul? I need you to intro me whenever I walk into a bar or restaurant, anywhere I go.
Wow.
I just need you to step in and give me an intro because that was fantastic. I can definitely roll with that.
Well, aw shucks, baby. I appreciate that, and it's been nice to hear that a few times. Connor Hughes, Connor Rodgers, Leger Douzable, a couple of them have said that same thing, and you know what? That warms my heart, baby. And again, your people talk to my people, and we'll make that happen. We'll sign on the dotted line, so to speak. So with that being said, Bo, let's dive in here. And ultimately, as some thought or some maybe it could have happened, the Las Vegas Raiders are cutting ties with Derek Carr. It will be official through the NFL transactional deadline, which, of course, is at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. So, Mo, I got to ask you, is it a surprise ultimately that this is where we landed?
It's not a surprise that we landed at this point, only because I feel like the Raiders showed their hand too early. Once they benched Derek Carr week 17 against the 49ers and started Jarrett Stidham, it was clear that they were ready to move on. Now, of course, they didn't want to be on the hook for the $40.4 million that they would have to owe him if he gets hurt because there was an injury guarantee built into his contract. So 32.9 in 2023 and 7.5 in 2024. So I understand why they did that. But as an offensive coordinator or play caller, Josh McDaniels could have done some things to protect his quarterback to make sure Derek Carr didn't get hurt in the last 2 weeks. Now you say, well, he could have got hurt. Well, he could have got hurt against the Steelers in the game before they benched him. He could have got hurt in the game before that. So to me, it's more of a they could have handled it a lot better so that they could have got something for Derek Carr. But again, once you show your hand that early, teams like the Jets or the NFC South teams that need a quarterback will say, why should we trade for Derek Carr when we could just wait for him to be released, which is going to happen. So in the Jets case, news came out that the Jets actually contacted the Raiders and were interested in the trade for Derek Carr, but those talks didn't go that far to the point where they agreed to any parameters like the Saints did. The Saints agreed to parameters on a trade if a trade were to go down, and that's why they were able to get a visit with Derek Carr because the Raiders weren't going to allow any team to talk to him unless the trade parameters were in place. So the Jets didn't go that far, but the Saints were willing to take the extra step to get a meeting with him. But ultimately, he decides he wasn't going to waive his no trade clause for the Saints or any other team. So this was Derek Carr basically exercising control of his own destiny, and I don't blame him for it. Raiders fans out there are saying he's a traitor. How could he do this? Why would he take the dinner? My theory is he got to the Saints facility, went out with them for dinner, and was able to gauge what his market would be like. So let's say the Saints said, Derek, we like you, but we don't want to be on the hook for $40.4 million. We'll pay you $30 or $32 million on a rework contract. And in Derek's mind, he's thinking, okay, I can hit the free agent market, and I know that the Saints will at least give me $30 or $32 million on the open market. And that's my floor, so to speak. Maybe another team will offer me more, but at least I know I had this cushion of $30 million from the Saints if need be, if I want to go to New Orleans. So I think he just used that visit to gauge his market early before he actually hits the free agent market.
And it's like you've done this before, Mo. A beautiful segue to where we're going next. And it's that very nugget that Albert Breer shared that made my eyebrow go, rose a little bit. Was that the only 2 teams, according to Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated, who's fantastic, the only 2 teams that inquired about a Derek Carr trade possibility, according to Albert Breer, is the New Orleans Saints, who, as you mentioned, hosted him, and the New York Jets, who only inquired. They didn't go any further than that. Does that mean something, nothing, anything on the prospective market there will be once he reaches the open waters in your mind?
I think it's something. But as you know, I'm sure Jets fans would prefer Aaron Rodgers, who's doing his Darkness Undertaker retreat. So I'm sure that they're going to wait for him to emerge from the darkness to make his decision and see what happens. I would assume that he is option number 1. From all reports that I've read, Aaron Rodgers is option number 1, and he should be. He's a 4-time league MVP, so of course. But then after that, if let's say Aaron Rodgers wants to go to the Raiders or any other team, or he decides to retire or even run it back with Green Bay, then I think the Jets move down a ticker and say, okay, let's get more serious about acquiring Derek Carr. So I think it is something. The Jets also hired Derek Carr's former quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator Todd Downing. So I think it's very interesting that the Jets are covering all their bases. They bring in Nathaniel Hackett, who's been connected to Aaron Rodgers. They bring in Todd Downing, who's been connected to Derek Carr. And I'm not saying they made those hires specifically for those quarterbacks, but I don't think it's a coincidence. So they're covering all their bases and making sure they're keeping their options open. I actually had a Bleacher Report column go out on Monday about the Jets rumors, actually on Tuesday, about the Jets rumors and their quarterback search, so to speak. If you remember the NFL honors ceremony and Diana Rossini interviewed Woody Johnson, what did he say? The quarterback position was a weakness. He didn't want to get hit with a tampering violation, so he didn't really say who they're talking to, who they're thinking about. But he said, obviously, we need an upgrade. They want an experienced player there. So it leads me to believe the Jets are going to cast a wide net where it goes from the top to the tippy top of Aaron Rodgers down to Ryan Tannehill if the Titans release him, and Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think that's the range of quarterbacks, and Derek Carr is somewhere in the middle simply because I think Derek Carr is a better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill and Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo, his injury history scares me. Raiders fans know I've said this. I'll bring that up to Jets fans, even though I think it's a fit. Injuries are concerned. So the Jets season, if you look at their season, they couldn't get a serviceable, healthy quarterback on the field at the end of the season. Mike White had some bruised ribs. Zach Wilson, as we know, wasn't good enough to start. So to me, bringing in a Jimmy Garoppolo is still risky because you may have to rely on your backup if he's your guy, if he's your number one. As far as Derek Carr is concerned, he hasn't missed many games because of injury. Now, of course, the Raiders benched him, but as far as missing games because he's hurt, hasn't missed a game since the 2017 playoffs, so to speak. When he got hurt, he broke his leg at the end of the 2016 season, couldn't play against the Houston Texans. Raiders lost that game with Matt McGloin on the field. But as far as being available, if you want a guy who's going to be serviceable and available, Derek Carr is your guy.
Well, that's a sexy pitch, Mel. I'm going to be honest. The Jets played 4 gosh darn different quarterbacks last year. It felt like a merry-go-round. I mean, for Pete's sake, the last time the Jets had a quarterback start every game inside a season was Ryan friggin' Fitzpatrick in 2015. And even in that, and you may remember that Raiders game that season, he got hurt after he started the game, and then we saw Geno Smith. So he didn't even really have a fully healthy season, but he did start each and every one of those games of that year. So that's the last guy. That was friggin' 8 years ago, for Pete's sake. So availability is certainly a sexy thing there potentially with Derek Carr. And I go to this now for people who don't know, and we continue to slam it down so people understand. As soon as Derek Carr is officially released, again, we're recording this on Tuesday. It's happening on Tuesday at 4 o'clock officially with the NFL transaction report. He can sign immediately with whoever the hell he wants. Free agency, he does not have to wait for, which will be in the next month, March 13th, 15th, legal tampering period in the official kickoff. So he could sign with whoever the heck he wants. I ask you this because an interesting wrinkle from Ian Rappaport is that Derek Carr is like, hey, I'm in no rush, baby. We're gonna let this ride. I had the visit with the Saints when he was still a member of the Raiders, and it seems like he's going to have multiple visits here to come. What's the timeline here? It seems like he could drag his feet. I mean, literally as long as he wants to, but how long ultimately is this? How many visits do you think he ultimately ends up going on before making that decision on where he wants to play next?
I think he takes a visit with the Jets, and I think he takes a visit with at least another NFC South team, whether it be the Carolina Panthers, because I don't know if Jets fans or fans in general remember this, when Frank Reich was with the Colts were interested in Derek Carr. He was the head coach there, and the Colts were spinning their wheels on veteran quarterbacks. They were interested in Derek Carr. Now, the new regime not, but now that he's in Carolina, I wouldn't be surprised if Frank Reich wants to have a seat with Derek Carr at the dinner table and talk business. I wouldn't be surprised if the Buccaneers want to talk to Derek Carr if they're able to clear cap space, because like the Saints, they're sapped with a lot of dead cap, and they're stuck with, I believe, $35 million from Tom Brady's retirement, his contract. So they would have to make some moves. To me, Baker Mayfield, Jimmy Garoppolo is more realistic for them. And if Derek Carr wants a little more money, I'm of the belief that Derek Carr is gonna want at least in the 30s, 30 to 32 million. As I said, it could go as low as 28 million if he likes the spot that he's going to and he feels that he can win right away. Maybe he takes less, maybe he goes under the $30 million mark per year. But I think he's going to be at 30 million or more, simple because if you look at the quarterback market, they're talking about guys like Justin Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts getting $50 million. Kyler Murray last year getting $46.1 million per year. So if you look at Derek Carr, serviceable starting quarterback, not a top 10 guy, but in that 12 to 15 range, a middling quarterback, it's going to cost you about 30 to 32 million. So I think with his timeline, he won't say this publicly. His agent won't let this out, but I think they're going to wait to see what happens with Aaron Rodgers, because that impacts with Derek Carr, where he's going to go and what he can demand. Because if you look at, let's say Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets, right? Let's say that just say he winds up with the Jets, right? And he emerges from his darkness retreat. The Jets have their quarterback. There's still going to be 7 to 8 teams that need a quarterback, or be at least sniffing around on one. Derek Carr then becomes the top available quarterback on the market. Now, I wouldn't say Aaron Rodgers is available because he's still under contract, but there's trade buzz around that. Now, of course, Lamar Jackson's still out there. We'll see what happens with that. But the Ravens are going to franchise tag him, and work with him on a long-term deal. So he won't be readily available. As far as the quarterbacks you can get right away, Derek Carr is number one. I mentioned the other guys, Baker Mayfield, Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think those guys are on Derek Carr's level, even though Derek Carr hasn't won a lot. Some of that is because the Raiders have been dysfunctional. The Raiders fans don't want to hear that, but a lot of that is because the Raiders haven't been able to put a decent defense around him, and the spinning of head coaches and regimes. I believe he's had 6 head coaches and 6 coordinators in his career. So all of that turnover, I'm not just absolving Derek Carr of the losing, but the Raiders were part of that as well. And I think other teams will look at that and say, if we get this quarterback out of a dysfunctional situation with so much turnover and put him in a good situation, a stable situation, he's worth the $30 to $32 million, and we can get him to win some games, and we'll pay him handsomely. Now, I don't know what the guarantees would look like, but as far as Derek Carr is concerned, I would want to be patient, because you're probably the number 2 option on most teams' board of quarterbacks in that carousel, because Aaron Rodgers is still lurking out there. But once Aaron Rodgers makes his decision, I would expect Derek Carr to come to his decision within 2 to 3 weeks of that.
Again, we're speaking with Moe Moton. You can follow him on Twitter. Well, at Moe Moton, baby. Just that easy. Make sure you do so on the old Twitter sphere. And, of course, like the video, hit subscribe wherever you're watching for more sexy and fantastic New York Jets content here. So, we're speaking with Moe Moton here on the program. And that's really it, Mo. Let's just boil it down to the nitty-gritty here. Jet fans, they're either on the Derek Carr train or the Aaron Rodgers train. Jeremy Fowler says that Derek Carr is number 2 on their wish list. That was a Super Bowl report after the weekend. But the problem is, well, Aaron Rodgers is now entering this darkness retreat. Apparently he was on the Pat McAfee show, wasn't going to be, was going to be in the darkness retreat some other day. God only knows what the hell is going on over there. But at the end of the day, his decision is supposed to, after he comes out of this cave, he's supposed to have some clarity on his future to be able to make that decision. And if Derek Carr is going to take his time, it seems like this is going to be a lot closer of, wow, maybe both are available for a decision to be made here, because that's the thing. With Aaron Rodgers, you're going to have to trade a bunch of picks and pay him money. For Derek Carr, the attraction is just the pile of money, which, quite frankly, is a prerequisite for any of these quarterbacks who are going to be available. Even if Derek Carr maybe is less talented than Aaron Rodgers, don't know if that's crazy to say, but, when you really look at this, that's the decision. Jet fans are split, Mo. It's hard to pick between the two when you factor in all the pros and cons that go with both.
I'll say this. When you're the New York Jets and you have the reigning defensive rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year, you had Quentin Williams, who got a defensive player of the year vote. He's going to get paid. You got a team basically that has a young nucleus. If Breece Hall comes back, he was probably an offensive rookie of the year candidate if he didn't get hurt and tear his ACL. So you have a young nucleus there. And I think if you're a Jet fan, if you end up with Aaron Rodgers or Derek Carr, you're a playoff team. I honestly believe that if either of those guys land with the Jets, if the Jets get either of those guys, they're a playoff team.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like Derek Carr is going to get, of course, the blowback of, well, he didn't win a lot with the Raiders. It's not like the Raiders didn't surround him with talent. He did have Devontae Adams and Jaren Wall this year, who was hurt, Hunter Renfrow, who was hurt, but he did have talent. Josh Jacobs, who was a rushing champion this year, he did have talent around him. What he didn't have is a stable environment where a GM made a lot of the good moves in free agency and the draft. As a lot of people know, the Raiders have whiffed on draft after draft after draft. That was supposed to be their foundation of the future of their team, and it finally caught up with them this year, in my opinion. They wasted a lot of money on free agents who didn't pan out. Joe Douglas, I know he didn't hit on Zach Wilson, but other than that, Joe Douglas had I said it during the draft. After the Jets had their 2022 draft, I said, this is the number one draft class. And I think I've been proven correct with the reigning offensive and defensive rookie of the year
not bad.
with Breece Hall. So he has a GM that obviously knows what he's doing, has a young nucleus in that team, a pretty good defense, I believe, top 4 in scoring. He didn't have that in Oakland or Las Vegas. Now, the only problem with Derek Carr's fit in New York, and I think Connor Rodgers brought this up on a different Jets podcast, is his makeup conducive to that environment? And what I mean by that, and what Connor meant by that is he willing to handle the pressure walking in, knowing that if it doesn't work out and the Jets don't make the playoffs, that coach staff could be on the outs. Guys could be getting fired. And as I just said, Derek Carr has dealt with turnover with the Raiders, going through head coaches, going through offensive coordinators. So is that situation appealing to Derek Carr? Because again, it's a two-way street. The Jets may want Derek Carr, and they do. They have some interest in him after Rodgers, but does Derek Carr want the Jets in that way? Is he that interested in coming to New York and stepping into a high pressure situation where he knows, if I don't win this year and take this team to the playoffs, we're going to be in shambles and I may have to look for another spot if the next head coach, next offensive coordinator doesn't want me here. So I would put that up there as something to think about. A lot of people talk about the cold weather aspect. Derek Carr hasn't played well in cold weather. He's a kid that's been on the West Coast, Fresno State, California, Las Vegas, Oakland. So I think as a human, I think you can adjust. If you're playing your away games in the cold again, in Denver and Kansas City, you come to New York, you go to Pittsburgh. Yeah, you may not play well because you're not used to it. But if your home games are played in New York in November, December, I think over time you will adjust. But I will also say it's not like New York is the frozen tundra in Green Bay. We're not New England, so it's not like he would be experiencing sub-0 degree temperatures in New York, New Jersey in November. Like, we're here. I'm in Brooklyn. I'm assuming you're in the tri-state area. So
upstate New York, baby.
We had, as a matter of fact, we had a warm winter. No snow.
Yes.
No snow accumulation, really.
Yeah.
We've had a relatively warm winter. So for the people that say, oh, Derek Carr is not going to like the cold weather, I would say this isn't New England. This isn't Green Bay in January. It's not blistering cold every year. So I don't think that's a major aspect. Does Derek Carr want to go to a situation where, again, high pressure, guys could get fired, and he may have to look elsewhere in 2024?
Yeah, I'll just kind of drop the mic. Feel free to, kind of speak to it. But I just feel like the whole Derek Carr cold weather thing argument is just full of malarkey. First off, you just mentioned it. He played college football at Fresno State, California. Oakland is where he played professional ball before they went to Las Vegas. Like, first off, how big is the sample size? I mean, I literally know. I know Rich Zamini just did a thing about it. It's like, I don't know, 15 games of whatever the temperature mark they pick, like under 40 degrees. So he's got like a 15-game sample size. Whether he killed it and looks like the next coming of the Messiah, or he sucked, which is what the numbers say. Like, either way, is there even enough of a sample size to go clear? Obviously, cold weather is a no-go, or cold weather is no problem. No, this is my opinion, Mo. I don't know. I haven't been watching every Derek Carr game for his entire career, but again, the sample size seems so insignificant that I can't make a determination one way or the other. And while the numbers just seem to stink, I'm like, I don't care. That doesn't matter to me. That's pretty low on the totem pole. If I'm not a Derek Carr guy, or I am a Derek Carr guy, the cold weather thing isn't flipping it one way or the other. I don't know if I'm crazy here, but just to kind of just drop that to kind of wrap us up here. I don't know. That seems a little bonkers, Mel.
You're not. And I think people are blowing it up. I mean, the numbers are there. The numbers are what they are.
Sure. Yeah.
But again, if he was going to play in New England, then I would say it's maybe more of a factor. If he was going to New England, if he was going to Green Bay, I would say then more of a factor. But I just don't see it as something the Jets would set the table and go, well, looking at his small sample size of cold weather games, I don't know. I think it's more of, again, does he have the genetic makeup to stand in the pocket, so to speak, stand in front of the New York media after a loss and answer some tough questions when reporters are coming at him? Because let me tell you, I'm not saying they handled Derek Carr with kid gloves in Las Vegas, but I'm sure you know this. The New York media is a whole nother animal. And when the criticism comes flowing and your face is on the back page of the New York Post, you're gonna have to deal with that. Now, I will say his brother did play for the New York Giants for a short period, so if he wants to figure out how to navigate the New York landscape with the media, he can just talk to his brother about that. The things again that I would be worried about with Derek Carr on the field is red zone. I said this on another Jets podcast. Zach Wilson was actually more efficient, had a better passer rating than Derek Carr in the red zone. It was
on Badlands,
yes. So that's something that the Jets are going to have to figure out. How can we get Derek Carr to be more efficient in the red zone? I think the answer to that is to have a strong run game. That's where Breece Hall comes in. Because when Josh Jacobs was healthy on the field, the Raiders were able to pound the rock in when they got inside the 20, inside the 10, inside the 5. They had the rushing champion there. So Breece Hall being back and that offensive line being rebuilt, or maybe Mekhi Becton comes back. I saw a ticker on him earlier, and he's finally healthy. If they can get a strong offensive line and Breece Hall back, they can rectify or help rectify Derek Carr's red zone issues. The other thing is, as far as the offensive line is concerned, Derek Carr, I'm sure you're hearing this a lot, but this is in the Athletic article yesterday on Monday. It was leaked that Derek Carr sometimes has an issue standing tough in the pocket. And I distinctively remember when Jarrett Stidham started against the 49ers, and he, even though it was a Raider loss, he had a pretty good game. There was one instance where he rolled out and he threw the ball at the very last second to Devontae Adams, who scampered downfield for a score, I believe. Derek Carr is not known for doing that. I'm not saying he's afraid to get hit, but there are times where he would prefer to throw the ball away or dump the ball off to a running back or a tight end than take a hit and go downfield. So that's something that the Jets are going to have to consider. That offensive line has to be at least solid if Derek Carr is going to play at his peak level. So that's something you really, really have to think about if you bring in Derek Carr. What's the health of your offensive line? What's the status of your offensive line? Do we have the run game to complement him? Because there are times where he has a bunch of game-winning drives, but there are times where he gets down inside the 5, where it gets tight, and he'll stall on that offense. So you have to be mindful. It has to be a complete package for him. You can't expect Derek Carr to put an offense on his shoulders week in and week out. He's not an Aaron Rodgers in his prime. He's not a Patrick Mahomes, obviously. He's not a top 10 quarterback, in my opinion, in that regard. But if he has a complementary offensive line and run game, he could be very effective.
Well, fair enough. Well, Mo, we may be talking to you very soon again, I guess, if Derek Carr makes a certain decision on his NFL future. Nonetheless, whether he does or doesn't, super informative, super entertaining. Mo, gosh darn Moton, baby, carving out some time for us on what is a very busy time with the Derek Carr decision finally coming down the pike. Mo, it was great for you to, come on the show for the very first time, and I know it won't be the last time. Thanks for coming, pal.
Definitely won't be the last time. I need another intro like that from Boy Green and get me out there to Jets fans. Because just quick background story, I come from a family of Jets fans, so I grew up watching a lot of Jets games before NFL Sunday Ticket was around, and I couldn't watch Raider games. I was watching a lot of the Jets. Big Keyshawn Johnson guy, big Wayne Corbett guy. So if you give me the call, I'm here for Derek Carr, being a Derek Carr whisperer or how he fits. Give me a call. I'm here.
All right, there he is, Moe Moton. And again, guys, you can follow him on Twitter at Moe Moton, MoeMoton. And make sure you do so on Twitter. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.